He kicked the door in before I even had time to breathe. The sound tore through the room like thunder, wood cracking, glass shattering, the air filled with flying splinters. I didn't even see his face at first, just the gun. Cold. Black. Pointed straight at me. I screamed. I wish I could say I didn't, but I did. Loud. The kind of scream that rips your throat open. "Shut up," he yelled. His voice wasn't steady, it was shaking. Desperate. And in that split second I saw it, he was terrified too. He stumbled into the room, soaked from the rain, eyes darting everywhere like a hunted animal. The gun wavered in his hand, and I swear I could see his finger twitch against the trigger. One wrong move, one wrong breath, and that was it. I froze where I stood. My heart slammed against my ribs, my legs refused to move, and every instinct screamed run. But my body wouldn't listen. He was bleeding. His arm was cut open. A deep, jagged slice that dripped onto my carpet. His breath came fast, uneven, panicked. "If you scream again," he said, voice trembling, "we both die tonight." I didn't understand what that meant, but I knew he wasn't bluffing. His eyes told me everything. Whatever he was running from was worse than what he might do to me. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely there. "Just take whatever you want." He shook his head, backing toward the window. The rain hit his face, his clothes clinging to his body, blood mixing with water. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I don't want anything," he muttered, still looking out the window. "I just need time. Just a minute." Then headlights flashed outside. A car pulled up, slow and deliberate, its engine still running. He froze. His hand tightened on the gun. His jaw clenched. Through the blinds I saw two silhouettes step out of the car. Tall. Heavy. Moving like men who'd done this before. That's when he whispered it, almost to himself. "They found me." My stomach dropped. "Who?" Before I could ask, he turned to me again, panic flooding his face. "You don't understand. If they know you're here." He didn't finish the sentence. The knocks came. 3 of them. Slow. Heavy. "Open up, Landon. We know you're in there." Landon. That was the first time I heard his name. And at that moment I realized this wasn't a home invasion. I was caught in someone else's war. He looked at me again, and for a second I thought he might pull the trigger just to silence the witness. The fear in his eyes wasn't about killing me. It was about being killed. I raised my hand slowly, tears mixing with sweat. "Please don't." He pressed a finger to his lips, trembling. "You make a sound," he whispered, "and they'll kill us both." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Outside, footsteps splashed through puddles. The men were close now. The door shook with another hit. Inside, the barrel of his gun lowered, just slightly, but his hand still shook. His breathing matched mine, fast and shallow. In that single second of silence I realized something terrifying. He wasn't the villain. He was the warning. And whatever was coming next was far worse than the man with the gun. What would you do if someone like him burst into your home? Would you fight back? Or stay still and pray it's not your last breath? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next still haunts me. After that night, my world didn't return to normal. It just went quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace, but rather the uneasy silence before a scream. I kept hearing that gunshot in my dreams, even though it had never gone off. The memory of Landon's trembling hands, his hollow eyes, and that strange warning, "If you scream, we both die tonight," played in my mind on repeat like a haunting song I couldn't turn off. Days turned into weeks, and though my bruises faded, the fear didn't. I still jumped at small sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, a floorboard creaking, wind brushing against the window. Every sound felt like a threat, every shadow a reminder that safety was just a word people like to believe in. I went back to work at St. Vincent's Hospital hoping routine would fix me. The smell of antiseptic, the endless beeping of monitors, the shuffle of nurses. These were things I could predict. The hospital had rules, and in a world that no longer made sense, rules were the only thing that kept me from falling apart. I worked long hours in the trauma unit, trying to lose myself in the rhythm of saving other people's lives. It was easier to fix someone else's bleeding than to look at my own invisible wounds. To everyone around me, I was the calm, gentle nurse who smiled through exhaustion. But inside I was barely holding it together. Sometimes, when the night shift was slow, I'd find myself staring out the hospital window at the rain. It was on a night like that when my brother Adam had died. 6 years ago, he had been home alone when someone broke in. He tried to protect me, but he never made it out alive. I still remember my mother's scream when she found him, a sound that had carved itself into my bones. Since that day, home invasions weren't just stories on the news for me. They were memories. My best friend Julia was the only one who saw through my mask. She'd always been the bright light in every room, loud, fearless, and full of laughter that made people turn their heads. She'd been with me through the aftermath of Adam's death. And she was with me now, trying to pull me back into the world I had shut myself out of. One afternoon during break, she sat across from me in the hospital cafeteria, stirring her coffee like it had personally offended her. "You can't keep living like this, Grace," she said, breaking the silence. "You survived. You should be living, not hiding behind your walls." I looked at her, managing a tired smile. "I'm not hiding, Jules. I'm just being careful." She shook her head. "There's careful, and live like you expect someone to attack you every time you breathe. You're not free, Grace. You're surviving on borrowed courage." I didn't respond. How could I explain that fear had become part of me? That even in daylight I could feel danger breathing down my neck? "Promise me you'll at least try," she said softly. "Go out, meet someone, live again." I nodded, but deep down I knew I wouldn't. I wasn't ready. That evening I drove home under a gray sky heavy with clouds. The rain was light but cold, drumming softly against the windshield. I parked outside my apartment complex, exhaled deeply, and sat for a moment in the quiet hum of my car engine. Then I saw it. A black SUV parked a few houses down. Its windows were tinted, engine off, completely still. I wouldn't have paid attention to it if it hadn't been for the faint red glow inside, like the tip of a cigarette burning in slow motion. First, I told myself it was nothing. People parked there all the time. But as I stepped out of my car, the air felt wrong. Still. Watching. I couldn't explain it, but I knew someone was inside that vehicle, and they weren't there by accident. I quickened my pace to the door, fumbling with my keys until I finally slipped inside. I locked the door once, then twice, and stood in the darkness listening. No footsteps. No sound. Just the soft tick of the clock in the living room. I walked to the window and carefully pulled the curtain aside. The SUV was still there. The red glow flickered again, and for a brief second I saw movement. Someone leaning forward in the driver's seat watching my house. My throat went dry. I dropped the curtain and backed away. Was it him? Landon? The man who had broken in weeks ago? But he'd been arrested, hadn't he? Or was this someone else? Someone who'd been looking for him? I tried to calm myself down. Maybe it was just a neighbor, maybe I was overthinking. But the more I tried to reason, the faster my heart pounded. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch, eyes fixed on the window, waiting for the SUV to move. Hours passed and it stayed there, quiet, unmoving, patient. At 3:07 a.m. the engine finally started. I heard the faint crunch of tires against wet asphalt as it rolled away. Relief came slowly, but not comfort. Whoever that was, they weren't lost. They were waiting. The next morning I went to work like nothing had happened, though I barely remember how I made it through my shift. My hands trembled when I picked up scalpels, my voice shook when I spoke to patients. Julia noticed right away. "Grace," she said, gripping my wrist gently. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." But that night the SUV was back. Same spot. Same faint red glow inside. This time I didn't even go inside right away. I stood beside my car, drenched in drizzle, staring at that vehicle that had now become my nightmare made real. Whoever was in there didn't move. Didn't try to hide. It was almost like they wanted me to know I was being watched. I ran inside, locked the door, and turned off every light. My pulse thudded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I pulled the curtain again and froze. The SUV's driver's side window was half open now. Smoke drifted lazily into the rain. And then for the first time I saw the reflection of a man's face in the glass. It wasn't Landon. It was someone older, sharper, colder. And he was smiling. That was the night I stopped pretending. I knew what my instincts were telling me. My past wasn't done with me. Whatever Landon had dragged into my life that night, it had found its way back. And this time I didn't think I'd survive it. Have you ever had that feeling your past was coming back to finish what it started? That no matter how far you've run, it somehow finds you again? Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that? Just type yes. The night it all fell apart, the rain didn't stop, not for a second. It was the kind of rain that blurred the world into one long smear of headlights and fear. My hands were slick with blood, though not all of it was mine. My chest burned, every breath a knife. I didn't have time to stop, not even to think. If I slowed down, I was dead. My name is Landon Reyes, and I'm not the killer they think I am. The city lights faded behind me as I ran through the alleys, my boots splashing in the puddles, heart pounding like it was trying to break free from my ribs. The sound of tires screeching echoed somewhere close, followed by a voice I'd recognize anywhere, Derek Voss. He wasn't yelling my name. He didn't have to. I knew who he was looking for. Derek and I had once been close, if you could call what we had close. We worked together on the streets, running deals that weren't exactly clean but not bloody either. That night was supposed to be simple. In and out. Get the money, disappear. But something went wrong, horribly wrong. When I got there, the deal was already dead. Literally. 2 men were on the floor, both shot in the chest, and the briefcase full of cash sat open beside them, empty. I stood frozen, the metallic smell of blood thick in the air. Then I heard footsteps, Derek's voice shouting orders. He walked in holding the gun, and before I could say a word, he looked at me and smiled. You really shouldn't have trusted me, brother. That was when I realized he had planned this from the start. I was the fall guy. I ran before he could pull the trigger, my lungs screaming for air, my mind spinning with panic. The streets swallowed me, the rain washing away footprints but not guilt. I didn't kill anyone. But that wouldn't matter once Derek told his version of the story. Now I was bleeding, hunted, and out of time. I slipped into a deserted street, pressed my hand to my side, and felt the sticky warmth of blood soaking through my shirt. My vision blurred. I stumbled toward the curb and sat under the broken awning of an old grocery store. The rain poured through a hole in the roof, tapping against the pavement like a cruel clock counting down the seconds I had left. From my jacket pocket, I pulled out a crumpled photograph, my sister Lila. 12 years old. Big brown eyes, the kind that saw good in everyone. The only family I had left. I promised her I'd take her away from this life. Give her something better than running and hiding. Now I couldn't even keep myself alive. Lila, I whispered to the rain. I'm sorry. Somewhere in the distance, an engine roared. Headlights cut through the fog like knives. I ducked down, heart thundering. The SUV rolled past slowly, dark, heavy, familiar. Derek's car. He was still hunting me. I waited until the lights disappeared before forcing myself back to my feet. My body felt heavier with every step, my vision pulsing in and out of focus. I needed to get off the street, somewhere warm, somewhere safe, just for a night. That's when I saw it. A small apartment building down the road, lights off, curtains drawn. Every other house on the block was glowing with the dull yellow of TV screens or kitchen lamps, but this one was quiet, dark, sleeping. I hesitated at the edge of the sidewalk, the rain dripping from my hair. I didn't want to break in. I wasn't that man. But if I didn't find shelter, I wouldn't make it till morning. I stood there for a long moment, clutching my side, the photo of Lila still in my hand. Then a distant engine echoed again, Derek's car circling back. I didn't think so. I just moved. I ran across the street, keeping low, my boots slipping against the wet concrete. The closer I got, the louder my heartbeat became, like thunder trapped inside my chest. I reached the door and tested the handle. Locked. Of course. The sound of an engine grew louder. Closer. I looked around desperately, then saw a narrow window beside the back entrance. Small but big enough for me to squeeze through. I smashed the glass with my elbow, biting back the pane, then cleared the shards with my sleeve. The rain fell harder, soaking me to the bone as I pulled myself inside. My boots hit the floor with a dull thud. I froze, listening. Nothing. Just the faint hum of a refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of a clock. I stood in the darkness, my breath ragged, blood still dripping from my side. I'd made it. I was safe, at least for now. Then I heard it, the soft creak of a floorboard behind me. I spun around, gun in hand, before I even realized I'd drawn it. A woman stood in the doorway. She was barefoot, wearing an oversized t-shirt, her hair messy from sleep. For a second we just stared at each other, both frozen, both afraid. I didn't want to hurt her. God, I didn't even want to scare her. But Derek's headlights flashed through the window and panic took over. If you scream, I said, my voice cracking with desperation, we both die tonight. She froze. And in that moment I realized she wasn't my enemy. She was just in the wrong place at the worst possible time. But fate doesn't care about that. Outside I saw shadows moving, men stepping out of the SUV, flashlights cutting through the rain. Derek had found me. My grip on the gun tightened. The woman's eyes widened in terror. And as the first beam of light swept across her living room window, I made my choice, the choice that would change everything. I turned toward her, my voice low, pleading. I'm not here to hurt you. But if you want to live, you need to trust me. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then, headlights flared brighter, stopping right in front of the house. And everything exploded into motion. If you're still here, it means you're hooked. Go ahead and hit the like button, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about good and evil. The rain poured harder. The glass rattled. The door shook under the weight of the first knock. And that was the night our lives collided. Mine running from guilt, hers from fear. The night I broke into Grace's home and changed both our fates forever. The moment the headlights flashed across my window, I knew it wasn't over. The nightmare had found me again. I froze in the middle of my living room, heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then from the shadows I heard movement, the creak of a floorboard, the sound of someone breathing. He stepped forward, and the sight of him turned my blood to ice. The same man who had broken into my house weeks ago stood there again, drenched, shaking, a gun in his hand. But this time he looked worse. There was blood seeping through his shirt, dripping down his arm, his face pale and hollow. His eyes darted to the window, then back to me. Don't scream, he whispered hoarsely. Please. I should have screamed. I should have run. But the look in his eyes stopped me. Not the wildness of a killer, but the exhaustion of someone who had been running too long. What do you want? I managed to say, my voice trembling. He pressed his back against the wall, breathing heavily. Just 5 minutes. I need 5 minutes. Get out. I snapped, my voice louder now. You're bleeding, you're trespassing, and... He winced, pressing a hand against his side. And for a second I saw his pain, raw, human, unguarded. The words died on my tongue. Please, he said again, softer this time. I don't want to hurt you. I just need somewhere to hide. There was a knock on the door. 3 short, heavy thuds that made every muscle in my body tighten. He froze. Our eyes met. They found me, he whispered. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't even know who they were. But something in his voice, that quiet panic, that fear I recognized too well, told me it was real. I glanced toward the door, then back at him. Who's outside? He shook his head. You don't want to know. I deserve to know who's in my house. His breathing grew shallow. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Lightning flashed outside, lighting up his face. I saw the blood more clearly now, dark and thick, soaking through the fabric at his ribs. The gun in his hand trembled slightly. He wasn't aiming it at me anymore. He was just holding on to it like it was the only thing keeping him alive. I could have run then. The back door was just a few steps away. But something stopped me, the way he swayed on his feet, the way his voice cracked when he whispered. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Sit down, I said quietly, before you fall down. He hesitated, as if surprised by my tone. Then, slowly, he lowered himself to the floor, wincing as the movement tore through his side. I kept my distance but grabbed a towel from the counter, tossing it toward him. He caught it with shaky hands, pressing it against the wound. You're helping me? He asked, voice filled with disbelief. I don't know what I'm doing, I replied. But bleeding all over my floor isn't helping either of us. He gave a small broken laugh that turned into a cough. You don't have to trust me. I don't. Then why aren't you running? I hesitated. The truth lodged itself in my throat. Because you look like someone who's already been running too long. He looked up then, meeting my eyes. And for a brief moment the fear between us shifted, from something sharp and violent to something fragile. Like 2 broken mirrors facing each other. My name's Landon, he said finally, voice barely audible. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to humanize the man who had once pointed a gun at me, but hearing his name made him real. Not a monster, not a shadow. Just a man. Outside, thunder rolled again. The lights flickered. I could feel my pulse in my throat. "Who's after you?" I asked. He looked away, his jaw tightening. "You don't want to get involved. You already made me involved." His silence was answer enough. Then quietly he said, "His name's Derek. I used to work for him. He kills people who know too much." And I knew too much. I wanted to ask more, but his eyes darted to the window again. "Don't stand there," he hissed. "Move away from the glass." "What?" "Just do it." I stepped back instinctively, and a second later, light swept across the living room wall, the beam of a flashlight cutting through the rain. Landon pushed himself up, grimacing from the pain, gun still in hand. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "They're outside." Fear clawed its way up my spine. I crouched behind the sofa, heart pounding. The sound of footsteps splashing in the rain grew louder, closer. He stood in front of the window, watching. His silhouette looked strange in the lightning, half hero, half criminal. Then suddenly he turned toward me. "If they come in," he said, "you don't move. You don't speak. You just trust me." Before I could respond, the front porch light flickered to life. Shadows moved across the glass. And through the rain I saw him. A tall man in a black coat stepping out of the SUV. Derek. His face half hidden by the darkness, but his smile unmistakable, slow, cold, knowing. He looked straight at the window. Straight at us. My breath caught in my throat. Landon tensed, eyes narrowing. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like it knew what was coming. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. Whatever was about to happen next would decide whether either of us made it out alive. Fewer Grace, what would you do right now? Would you try to talk to him or would you fight back? Type talk or run in the comments. I want to know how you'd survive this moment. Outside, Derek's shadow loomed closer, his boots crunching against the wet porch. The gun in Landon's hand trembled again. And then the doorknob began to turn. The sound of the doorknob turning was slow at first, almost deliberate, like whoever stood outside was savoring the fear bleeding through the air. I felt my entire body tighten. Landon raised his gun, jaw clenched, his breath quick and shallow. The rain outside was relentless, hammering against the glass like a warning that no one was safe anymore. Then the door swung open. Derek Voss stepped inside. He wasn't like the average intruder or thug. There was something too calm about him, too measured. His coat dripped rainwater onto the floor, his boots leaving deep prints on the tiles. His face was sharp, his eyes hollow, and his smile, that slow, cruel curve, made the air feel heavy. "Well," he said, voice smooth and cold. "You really are predictable, Landon. I knew you'd crawl somewhere familiar." Landon stiffened, gun still raised. "Leave her out of this, Derek. She doesn't know anything." Derek's eyes flicked toward me. They lingered for just a second, enough to make my stomach drop. "Oh, I think she knows plenty now," he said, drawing a black pistol from under his coat. "You broke into her house, bled all over her floor, dragged your mess right to her doorstep. So tell me, Landon, why shouldn't I clean it up?" Landon moved in front of me instinctively, shielding me with his body. "You'll have to go through me first." Derek's smile widened. "You always did have a hero complex." His hand twitched. The sound came next. A single deafening crack that split the air. Bang! I screamed before I even realized it. Landon stumbled backward into me, his body heavy and warm, and when I looked down, I saw the spreading red stain across his chest. My hands caught him before he hit the floor, but his weight was too much. We both collapsed, the gun clattering out of his hand. Derek's boots echoed on the tile as he approached. "I told you not to make this harder than it had to be." I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My fingers pressed against Landon's wound, blood seeping through them like ink on paper. He gasped, eyes unfocused, whispering something I couldn't make out. "Please," I managed to choke. "Don't do this. He's hurt. He needs help." Derek aimed the gun at me now, his expression empty. "You shouldn't have opened your door, sweetheart. Wrong night, wrong stranger." Outside, sirens screamed in the distance, faint but growing louder. Derek's head turned slightly toward the sound, his jaw tightening. "Police!" I whispered, almost in disbelief. For the first time he looked uncertain. Then he cursed under his breath. You called them. I didn't, I said, shaking my head. I didn't. He hesitated for just a second, one heartbeat, maybe two, before snapping his gun back toward me. Then I guess we're both unlucky tonight. Landon moved. It was weak, clumsy, but enough. He pushed himself forward, slamming into Derek's leg. The shot went wide, shattering the picture frame above the sofa. I screamed again, the glass raining down around us. Derek stumbled back, momentarily thrown off balance. Landon coughed, his voice raw. Run. I didn't. I couldn't. Every nerve in my body screamed to move, but my knees locked beneath me. Derek kicked Landon aside and turned to flee, his coat whipping behind him as the red and blue lights flashed through the rain-streaked windows. He was gone before I even realized it, swallowed by the storm outside. The sirens were closer now, blinding lights painting the walls in chaos. I crawled to Landon's side, my shaking hands trying to stop the bleeding that wouldn't stop. Stay with me, I whispered. Please just stay with me. His breathing was shallow, every word a struggle. You shouldn't have helped me. Stop talking, I said, tears streaking down my face. You saved me. Just hold on. He looked up at me, his lips trembling into something that almost resembled a smile. Yes, I finally did one good thing. His eyes fluttered shut for a second, and I slapped his cheek gently. No, don't you dare. But his head grew heavier in my hands. Outside, officers shouted commands. Doors slammed. Footsteps pounded on wet pavement. The entire world was noise and flashing lights, but all I could hear was Landon's faint, uneven breathing. I cradled him tighter, the blood soaking through my shirt, my heart breaking under the weight of what just happened. The man who once broke into my home had just taken a bullet for me. And somewhere out there Derek Voss was still free, still watching. If your heart's racing right now, hit that like button because this isn't the end. The real nightmare is just beginning. And the man who pulled the trigger isn't done yet. As the police lights flashed across the room, I whispered one last promise to Landon, even though I wasn't sure he could hear me anymore. I won't let him get away. The sirens faded into the night, swallowed by the rain and the confusion that followed. My living room looked like a war zone. Glass everywhere, blood smeared across the floor, furniture knocked over like it had all witnessed something it wished it hadn't. Landon lay where I'd left him, barely conscious, his breath shallow and broken. The paramedics hadn't arrived yet. Maybe they wouldn't, not fast enough at least. And the thought of explaining to the police why a bleeding man with a gun was in my home? That was a death sentence for both of us. I didn't think so. I just moved. I dragged him, all that weight, all that blood, into the hallway. My arms shook under him, my back screamed, but I couldn't stop. I pulled him into the guest room, shut the door and grabbed the first towel I could find. Stay with me, I whispered, pressing the fabric hard against his wound. He groaned, his face twisting in pain. When his eyes finally opened again, there was confusion, then recognition. You should have run, he said weakly. And leave you to die? I snapped back, the anger surprising even me. After you just took a bullet for me? He tried to sit up, but I pushed him down gently. Don't move. You'll make it worse. His breathing steadied for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice rough. I didn't mean to hurt you that night. I swear I didn't. I was trying to protect someone. The words hit me harder than I expected. Protect someone? Who? Protect who? I asked, but he just stared at the ceiling, his hand trembling as it pressed against the bloodied towel. A silence fell between us. Heavy, intimate, fragile. The kind that forces truth out of the cracks. Finally I said it. Why save me, Landon? You could have run. You could have left me to die. He turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting mine. And in that look I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not fear, not anger, not even guilt. Something else. Maybe, he whispered. I'm tired of being the bad guy. The words lingered in the air like smoke. I didn't know how to respond. My chest tightened from fear, pity, or something else I didn't want to name. I stared at him, this stranger, this criminal, this man who had crashed into my life like a storm and somehow, in the middle of all the chaos, chose to save me. He was supposed to be the monster in my story. But now, sitting there half dead on my floor bleeding for me, he didn't look like a monster. He looked human. For the first time I saw the man beneath the mistakes. The exhaustion. The guilt. The way he flinched when thunder cracked outside. This wasn't a cold-blooded killer. It was a man running from something much darker than himself. I got up, pacing the small room. My hands trembled as I spoke. They're going to come back. You know that, right? Derek won't stop until you're dead. He nodded faintly. He won't have to. I'm not making it through tonight anyway. Don't say that, I said, kneeling beside him. You're going to make it. I won't let you die here. A weak smile flickered across his face. You really shouldn't care about me. Maybe I'm tired too, I muttered. Tired of pretending I don't. He stared at me, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. And maybe I couldn't either. Then through the window a flash of red and blue light cut across the walls. My heart dropped. The police were back. The flashing grew brighter, washing over the curtains like waves of panic. My breath hitched as I peeked through the blinds. 2 patrol cars. Officers stepping out, flashlights slicing through the rain. I turned to Landon, his eyes wide, terrified. They can't find you here, I whispered. He tried to sit up, grimacing in pain. Grace. No, I said firmly, pressing my finger to his lips. Don't talk. Just trust me this once. I grabbed the blanket off the bed and threw it over him, hiding the blood as best as I could. Then I switched off the light. Every sound in the room suddenly became too loud. My heartbeat, his breathing, the steady tap of rain on the window. Outside, someone knocked on the front door. Hard. Ma'am, this is the police, a voice called. We received reports of gunfire. My hand froze on the doorknob. Behind me, Landon whispered, weak, breathless. Don't let them find me. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. Somewhere between fear and survival. I had crossed the line. I wasn't just hiding a criminal. I was protecting him. Be honest, would you help the same man who broke into your home? The same man everyone believes is dangerous? Tell me in the comments, because at that moment I didn't even know why I said yes. The knocking wouldn't stop. 3 firm raps against the door, echoing through my chest like a heartbeat I couldn't control. Ma'am? This is Detective Carter, LPD. A voice called from outside. Calm, steady, authoritative. We need to ask you a few questions. I froze by the doorway, palms slick with sweat. Behind me, in the guest room, Landon was still, barely breathing beneath the blanket, the faint sound of his struggle hidden beneath the storm outside. Every instinct screamed to tell the truth. But the truth would kill him. I took a deep breath and opened the door. 2 men stood in the rain. One tall and sharply dressed with gray eyes that didn't miss a thing. The other younger, holding a flashlight that swept across the shattered glass on my floor. Detective Carter and Officer Malik. Their badges glistened under the porch light. Evening, ma'am, Carter said, his tone formal but not unkind. We got a call about gunfire on this street. Your neighbor said she heard screaming. Are you okay? My throat felt dry. I forced a nod. Why, yes, I'm fine. It was just, I swallowed. It was just a noise. Something fell. I panicked. Carter's gaze lingered on the broken picture frame by the wall. The cracked door hinge, the blood smear-eyed mist near the carpet edge. Something fell, he repeated quietly. I felt my stomach twist. Malik crouched near the stain, shining his light. This looks like blood, he said. It's mine, I blurted out before I could think. I cut my hand trying to fix the window. I held up my bandaged fingers, still red from Landon's blood. Carter's eyes met mine, sharp, searching. You sure you're all right? Yes, I said too quickly. Really, I just want to clean up and rest. He didn't look convinced. If there's someone you're afraid of, now's the time to tell us. I'm not, I lied, forcing a shaky smile. There's no one else here. He studied me a moment longer, then nodded slowly. All right. But if anything feels off, anything at all, you call us immediately, understood? Yes, sir. They left after another minute, their footsteps fading into the rain. The moment the sound of their car disappeared, I shut the door, locked it, and pressed my back against it, trembling. I had just lied to the police. For a man who once pointed a gun at me. I turned toward the hallway. It's over, I whispered. They're gone. From the guest room I heard a faint voice. You didn't have to lie for me. I stepped inside. Landon was awake, his face pale but his eyes clear now, heavy with guilt. I did, I said softly. You saved my life. I wasn't going to let them take yours. He tried to sit up, grimacing as pain shot through him. You don't understand. If they knew who I was, what I've done, you'd never look at me the same. I sat beside him, voice low. Then make me understand. Tell me everything. He stared at the wall for a long time before speaking. His voice was barely a whisper. Derek wasn't just some criminal I crossed. We worked together. Smuggling diamonds, laundering cash for men you don't want to know exist. I thought it was just money. Then one night, he killed a man and blamed me for it. I swallowed hard. So you've been running ever since? He nodded slowly. They wanted to make me the fall guy. I had no one left except my sister Lila. She's the only reason I'm still breathing. I frowned. Where is she? His eyes darkened. I don't know. Derek has her. The silence that followed was unbearable. I looked at him. This man who had burst into my life in violence and chaos. And for the first time I didn't see danger. I saw loss. He leaned his head back against the wall, his voice breaking. You asked why I saved you. The truth is, when I saw you scared, trapped, it reminded me of her. Of Lila. I couldn't let it happen again. My chest tightened. Every piece of the puzzle, the fear, the desperation, the way he looked at me like I was something fragile he didn't want to break, suddenly made sense. You're not who I thought you were, I said quietly. He gave a weak laugh. I'm not sure I know who I am anymore. I didn't know what to say, so I did the only thing I could. I stayed. I changed his bandages, gave him water, watched as exhaustion slowly dragged him into sleep. And for a few hours the world outside didn't exist. There was no Derek, no police, no fear. Just two broken people breathing in the same silence. But when dawn came, everything changed. The first light crept through the curtains, pale and cold. I reached for the chair beside his bed, empty. The blanket was gone. His jacket too. On the nightstand there was only a folded piece of paper, stained with dried blood. My hand shook as I opened it. You gave me something I didn't think I deserved, a second chance. But if I stay, he'll come for you too. I can't let that happen. Don't look for me. Just live. L. I sank onto the bed, clutching the note, my throat burning with tears I couldn't stop. Somewhere in the distance, the faint rumble of an engine echoed. A car pulling away into the morning mist. I ran to the window, heart pounding, but the street was empty. He was gone. And though I didn't know it yet, his disappearance wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. If you still believe people can change, no matter their past, comment redemption. I want to know who still believes in second chances, because sometimes they're the only thing that can save us. By morning, the world already had its villain. Landon's face was everywhere. Flashing across news screens, glowing from phone alerts, splattered across headlines like a warning. Armed fugitive still at large, wanted for murder and home invasion. I stood frozen in my living room, watching the broadcast in disbelief. On the TV, a clean-cut reporter with an overly rehearsed voice spoke with grim authority. Local authorities are urging citizens to remain vigilant. The suspect, Landon Cross, is considered armed and extremely dangerous. New evidence links him to the fatal shooting of a known smuggler, Derek Voss. I almost dropped the mug in my hand. Fatal shooting? Derek wasn't dead. I saw him run. The camera cut to another reporter, Cam Reed, a man with the kind of cold charisma that made lies sound like truth. His tone was sharp, surgical, rehearsed. Sources close to the investigation describe Cross as erratic and violent, Cam said. Police believe he may be hiding in residential neighborhoods. Scene: do not approach. Call authorities immediately. They showed Landon's mugshot next. His eyes, hollow, exhausted, misunderstood, stared back at me from the screen. The same eyes that had once begged me to believe he wasn't a monster. My stomach twisted. The man on the TV wasn't the man I knew. The world had turned him into a ghost story. A headline, a threat, a nightmare. And I had helped him vanish. Grace. I turned. Julia stood by the doorway, arms crossed, her face pale with anger and fear. I've been calling you for hours. The police came to the clinic asking questions. What the hell is going on? I opened my mouth, but the words felt too heavy to push out. It's not what you think. Not what I think, she shot back. You're defending a killer. Grace, he broke into your house. He held you at gunpoint. Now he's on the news as a wanted murderer. And you're what, protecting him? I took a step toward her, voice trembling. Julia, he saved me. That man took a bullet for me. He's not who they think he is. She stared at me for a long, painful second. You don't know him, Grace. You're projecting, you always do this. You find broken things and think you can fix them. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. He's not broken, I said quietly. He's scared. And someone out there wants him dead. Julia sighed, her anger softening just slightly. Even if you're right, this isn't your fight. If he's dangerous, he'll drag you down with him. I turned back to the TV. The broadcast replayed Derek's image, alive, smug, standing outside a police precinct. The reporter's voiceover echoed like static in my mind. Derek Voss, a known informant, narrowly escaped an ambush allegedly orchestrated by Cross. My blood went cold. Derek was alive. And he was still lying. He was turning the entire world against Landon, and he was winning. Somewhere out there, Landon was bleeding, hiding, watching his name rot on every screen, while the real monster gave interviews and played the victim. The camera zoomed in on Derek, his smirk faint but unmistakable. He's dangerous, Derek said to the reporters. And if the police don't find him soon, someone else will. The message was clear. A threat hidden in plain sight. I didn't realize I was shaking until Julia touched my arm. Grace, she said softly. You're scaring me. What are you thinking? I took a breath, the decision already burning in my chest. I'm thinking I can't let him die for something he didn't do. Julia's eyes widened. No. Grace, please don't. But I was already grabbing my coat, my keys, the note Landon left me. I stuffed it into my pocket like a promise. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was the same color as regret, heavy, gray, endless. I didn't know where to start, but I knew one thing for certain. If Derek found him first, there wouldn't be a second chance. The police wanted a fugitive. Derek wanted revenge. But I just wanted the truth. As I stepped into my car and started the engine, I looked into the rearview mirror. My reflection ghostly in the dim light. This time, I whispered. I found him first. The tires splashed through puddles as I drove off into the fog, the news anchor's voice still echoing from my TV behind me. Authorities urge anyone with information on Landon Cross's whereabouts to come forward immediately. He is considered dangerous. But they were wrong. The real danger wasn't the man they were chasing. It was the one standing right in front of them, hiding behind a badge and a lie. If this story's got you holding your breath, hit subscribe, because what comes next will wreck you. Grace isn't just running toward danger now. She's running toward the truth. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the world still felt wet, heavy, as if the sky had forgotten how to breathe. My headlights cut through the mist as I drove past the forgotten outskirts of town, guided only by instinct and the crumpled note Landon had left behind. Don't look for me. It's safer that way. But I did. Because something in his eyes that night, the guilt, the exhaustion, the quiet desperation, told me that even if the world had given up on him, I couldn't. I followed the trail to the edge of the city, where the buildings turned to ghosts, boarded windows, cracked signs, silence thick enough to drown in. And that's where I saw it. An old church. Half burned, half standing, its cross still crookedly reaching for the heavens. The door creaked when I pushed it open. The air smelled of ash and old hymns. And there, near the altar, I saw him. Landon. He was sitting on the floor, leaning against a pew, blood soaking through his shirt. The candlelight flickered across his face, pale, fragile, but somehow peaceful. Grace, he whispered, his voice cracking like the walls around us. You shouldn't have come. I knelt beside him, my hands trembling as I pressed a cloth against his wound. You said not to look for you, I breathed. But I don't listen well. He smiled faintly. You never did. The sound of gravel crunching outside broke the moment. My heart froze. Landon's head lifted, eyes darkening. He found me, he murmured. It's Derek. Before I could react, the heavy church doors swung open with a thunderous slam. Derek stepped in, dressed in black, his gun gleaming under the dim light. His smile was pure venom. Well, he said, voice echoing through the empty church. Looks like the good doctor came to pray. Derek, stop, I said, stepping between them. You don't have to do this. Oh, I think I do, he sneered. He ruined everything, my deal, my cover, my name. You have no idea what this man has done. Landon pushed himself up weakly, standing despite the pain. She knows enough, he said. You used me, Derek. You killed your own men, then made me take the fall. Derek laughed, cold, sharp, unfeeling. You think anyone's going to believe you? You're already the monster in every headline. He raised the gun. For a moment I thought it was over. But then Landon moved. Faster than I expected, stepping between Derek and me once again. Don't, Landon said, voice low but steady. You've taken enough. Out of the way, Derek growled. Landon didn't move. You want someone to blame? Here I am. But you're not touching her. The church filled with silence, heavy, thick, eternal. And then the wail of sirens shattered it. Red and blue lights flashed through the stained glass, turning the broken cross into shards of color. Police cars screeched to a stop outside, doors flying open. Drop the weapon, a voice thundered from a megaphone. Derek spun toward the sound, his arrogance cracking into panic. Landon didn't flinch. You won't win this time, Landon said quietly. Derek turned back, gun shaking slightly. But before he could fire, the doors burst open again. Armed officers storming in, shouting commands. Hands up. Now. Derek's defiance faltered. His gun clattered to the floor. He didn't fight. He didn't run. They dragged him away, the great puppeteer finally tangled in his own strings. I stood frozen, tears mixing with the dust in the air. And then Landon, bleeding, barely standing, turned to me. It's over, I whispered. He gave a weak laugh. Not for me. Before I could stop him, he raised his hands slowly, surrendering to the officers behind him. No, I said, shaking my head. Landon, wait. He just smiled, a tired, almost peaceful smile. You showed me something I didn't think existed anymore. The officers pulled him away gently, almost respectfully. And just like that he was gone. The night that began with violence ended with quiet. But quiet can be the loudest sound when your heart is breaking. Days passed before I heard anything. Then one morning an envelope arrived. No return address. Just my name written in careful, uneven handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single folded note, stained slightly at the edge. Grace, you showed me that even broken people can still do one good thing. Landon. I held the letter for a long time, the words sinking into me like a second heartbeat. He was gone now, locked away behind bars, paying for crimes the world believed he committed. But in that moment I realized something that chilled and comforted me all at once. Maybe redemption wasn't about being forgiven. Maybe it was about finally choosing not to be the villain, even when the world insists you are. If someone saved your life but had a dark past, could you forgive them? Drop your answer below. I'm reading every comment. A year passes, but for me it doesn't feel like 12 months, it feels like another lifetime. The city moves differently now. The rain still falls, but it no longer sounds like fear against the windows. It sounds like renewal, healing. Every Wednesday morning, I walk through the glass doors of the community center downtown. On the second floor, in a small sunlit room, a circle of chairs waits. And in those chairs sit people whose eyes once carried the same tremor mine did. We don't call it therapy. We call it the restart. It's a trauma support group, for people who've lived through what they thought they'd never survive. For the ones who learned that life doesn't give you back your peace. You have to build it again, piece by piece. And every time I look around that room, every time I see someone finally smile through the pain, I think of him. Landon. He became the ghost I stopped running from. The memory that softened instead of scarred. And though the world still calls him a criminal, I know better. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't innocent. But he was human, and that counts for something. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from Father Michael, the prison chaplain who'd written to me once before. He said Landon had started a literacy program for inmates. Men who once lived by violence now sat around old library tables, learning how to read, how to write letters to their children, how to hope again. Father Michael said it was Landon's idea. He said, the letter read, words saved me once. Maybe they can save someone else. That sentence stayed with me for days. Today I decided to see him. For the first time since that night. The prison gates were tall and gray, the kind of gray that swallows light. But inside the world was strangely calm. When they led me into the visitation room, I saw him before he saw me. He was thinner, quieter, but his eyes were the same. Soft, searching, alive. He looked up, and when our gazes met, the room fell away. No words. No apologies. Just silence that said everything words couldn't. I smiled first. He smiled back. Between us there was no longer fear. No longer guilty. Only a quiet understanding that sometimes the people who enter our lives in the worst way end up changing us for the best. The guard tapped his watch. Our time was up. As I stood, Landon said softly, "You look happier." "I am," I said. "Because you reminded me what second chances look like." He nodded. "Then I guess it was all worth it." The door buzzed open. I hesitated before leaving, my hand resting on the glass. He raised his, mirroring mine on the other side. And in that silent touch, separated by a wall and a world, I realized. Forgiveness isn't just setting someone else free. It's unlocking the door you didn't know you'd closed on yourself. As I walked out into the sunlight, my voice echoed the truth I'd buried deep for so long. He pointed a gun at me that night. But he ended up saving both our lives. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me down in the comments, do you believe everyone deserves a second chance?